Big changes don't come from big moves. They come from tiny habits repeated daily. What if the secret to success isn't motivation, but momentum? James Clear's Atomic Habits reveals a powerful truth. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. This is not just a book. It's a manual for rewiring your life, one small change at a time. Welcome to Victory Think, where great minds meet simple strategies to help you build habits that build your destiny. In a quiet hospital room in Cincinnati, a 16-year-old boy named James lay still, his face swollen and his body shattered from a freak baseball accident. A bat had slipped from a teammate's hands during warm-ups and struck him squarely between the eyes. The impact crushed his skull, shattered bones, and left him struggling to breathe. His brain swelled rapidly, leading to seizures, a medically induced coma, and ultimately, the long road of recovery. What followed were months of pain, persistence, and physical rehabilitation. James learned to breathe on his own again, to walk again, and eventually, to return to school. But the path back was not defined by grand achievements or sudden leaps of progress. Rather, it was the product of small victories, sitting upright, writing his name, lifting a pencil. These tiny efforts, repeated day after day, laid the foundation for recovery. Years later, James Clear would reflect on those difficult times, not just as moments of survival, but as the seed of an idea that would blossom into a life philosophy, that tiny changes, compounded over time, can lead to remarkable results. The idea of habits, of small decisions repeated consistently, slowly began to occupy his thoughts. It was not about radical overhauls, not about transforming overnight. It was about the quiet power of atomic habits, small changes with a mighty impact. Habits, James would come to understand, are the compound interest of self-improvement. Just as money multiplies through compound interest, the effects of your habits multiply as you repeat them. They may seem insignificant at first, a single push-up, one page read, a minor dietary change. But just as $1 invested wisely can grow into a fortune, these micro-behaviors, when compounded, create lasting change. In the beginning, these tiny behaviors often feel useless. If you eat a salad today, you're still out of shape tomorrow. If you read for 10 minutes, you don't suddenly become a genius. But the slow pace hides the power. Success is the product of daily habits, not once-in-a-lifetime transformations. James realized that outcomes are a lagging measure of habits. Your weight is a lagging measure of your eating habits. Your knowledge is a lagging measure of your learning habits. Your clutter is a lagging measure of your cleaning habits. Your net worth is a lagging measure of your financial habits. You get what you repeat. This realization led him to abandon goals as the primary focus of change. Goals are about the results you want to achieve. Systems are about the processes that lead to those results. If you want better results, then forget about setting goals. Focus on your system instead. Imagine two people with the same goal, to write a book. One sets a goal of writing 1,000 words a day. The other creates a system of writing for 1 hour each morning after coffee. While the first may struggle when motivation wanes, the second builds an environment and routine that makes progress inevitable. James found that the true power lies not in goals, but in identity. Every action you take is a vote for the person you wish to become. If you read each night, you're voting for the identity of a reader. If you train each day, you're voting for the identity of an athlete. Habits are not just processes to get results. They are how you embody your identity. It's easy to say, I want to lose weight, or I want to be organized. But real change requires a shift in identity. The goal is not to run a marathon, but to become a runner. Not to write a book, but to become a writer. This identity-based habit formation flips the process of change. Instead of focusing on outcomes, we begin by asking, who do I wish to become? Once this identity is clear, each small habit becomes a reinforcement of that identity. If you want to be the type of person who never misses a workout, then even 5 minutes of exercise is a win. It confirms the identity. Each small win casts a vote. James found that the process of habit formation can be broken down into 4 simple steps: cue, craving, response, and reward. This is the feedback loop that underlies every habit. First, there is a cue, a trigger that initiates the behavior. Then, there is a craving, the motivational force. Next comes the response, the actual behavior. Finally, the reward, which satisfies the craving and teaches your brain the habit is worth remembering. Take the example of checking your phone. The cue might be a buzz or notification. The craving is the desire for social connection or novelty. The response is picking up the phone. The reward is the satisfaction of reading the message or seeing who liked your post. This loop reinforces itself. Each time it occurs, the habit becomes more automatic. The secret to building good habits is to make them obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying. These are the 4 laws of behavior change. First, make it obvious. James found that clarity is critical. Many people fail to change because their intentions are vague. Saying, "I'll exercise more," is not enough. Instead, you can implement what's called an implementation intention. This is a clear plan. I will exercise at 6 in the morning in the living room. The clearer your plan, the more likely you are to follow through. Environment also plays a role. We are more likely to act based on what we see. If a healthy snack is in sight, we eat it. If the remote control is within reach, we turn on the TV. The key is to design your environment for success. If you want to read more, place a book on your pillow. If you want to write more, keep your notebook on your desk. Small cues in your environment can guide behavior without effort. Second, make it attractive. The more appealing a habit is, the more likely we are to do it. One powerful method is temptation bundling, pairing a habit you want to form with something you enjoy. For example, you might allow yourself to listen to your favorite podcast only while running. This creates a positive association, increasing the likelihood you'll stick with it. Social environment matters too. We imitate the habits of 3 groups: the close, family and friends; the many, society; and the powerful, those we admire. Surrounding yourself with people who have the habits you want to adopt increases your chances of success. If your friends read often, you are more likely to become a reader. If they exercise regularly, you'll be pulled toward that behavior. Third, make it easy. The key is to reduce friction. The more difficult a habit is, the less likely you are to do it. James recommends starting with 2-minute habits. Want to read more? Start with read 1 page. Want to run? Start with put on your shoes. These gateway habits build momentum. Once in motion, it's easier to continue. Automation is another powerful tool. Using technology to lock in behavior, like automatic savings or reminders, can make habits nearly effortless. The less decision-making required, the more consistent the behavior becomes. Repetition is more important than perfection. It's better to do a little each day than to do a lot once and quit. Fourth, make it satisfying. Our brains are wired to repeat what feels good. That's why immediate rewards are crucial. If a behavior feels good, we're more likely to do it again. Even simple cues like checking off a habit tracker can provide satisfaction and reinforce the loop. Visual progress is a strong motivator. James encourages building a system of reinforcement. If you're trying to form a writing habit, allow yourself to mark a big red X on a calendar each day you write. The streak becomes motivation. The visible chain of progress keeps you going. Missing one day is fine, but never miss twice. This simple rule keeps the habit intact. While forming good habits is one side of the coin, breaking bad ones is the other. Fortunately, the same 4 laws can be inverted. To break a bad habit, make it invisible, unattractive, difficult, and unsatisfying. Making it invisible involves removing cues. If you're trying to stop snacking, don't keep chips on the counter. Out of sight, out of mind. Changing your environment can eliminate temptation. Making it unattractive involves reframing your mindset. Instead of thinking, "I deserve a cigarette to relax," you reframe it as, "I'm the type of person who doesn't poison his body." This shift in identity weakens the appeal of the habit. Making it difficult involves adding friction. Delete apps. Unplug the TV. Make bad habits harder to do. Use commitment devices, tools that restrict your future behavior. For example, give your friend $100 and tell them to keep it if you skip the gym. That added cost makes the habit more difficult to avoid. Making it unsatisfying involves adding consequences. Use accountability partners. Tell someone about your goal and let them know they'll check in. Social pressure and embarrassment are powerful forces. We are less likely to act against our goals if someone is watching. Underlying all of these strategies is the truth that habits are not destiny, they are design. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. Master the system, and the habits take care of themselves. James Clear had seen firsthand the transformative power of small actions. The boy once lying in a hospital bed eventually became a college athlete, not by luck or talent alone, but through patient, consistent effort. He learned to trust in the slow process, to fall in love with showing up, to focus not on the finish line, but on the next small step. And that was the real secret. Mastery doesn't come from intensity, it comes from consistency. It doesn't demand perfection, it demands repetition. As the days passed and his life rebuilt brick by brick, James saw the quiet miracle of compound habits in his own story. Each tiny vote, each small act, each disciplined step was a declaration, not just of what he wanted to do, but of who he wanted to become. As James continued his exploration of habits, he delved deeper into how the architecture of behavior shapes human destiny. What people often saw as discipline or willpower was, in truth, a matter of design. Success didn't lie in sudden spurts of effort, but in building an environment where good choices became the default. The invisible hand of surroundings often did more to guide habits than motivation ever could. He observed how tiny changes in the environment could lead to huge changes in behavior. A plate of cookies on the kitchen counter led to impulsive snacking, but hiding them away, or better yet, not buying them at all, eliminated the temptation. A messy workspace discouraged productivity, while a clean and organized desk made creative work inviting. The key was to prime the environment to promote the desired habit. James shared stories from around the world, showing how small tweaks could yield profound changes. In one hospital, moving the water bottles to eye level in the refrigerator increased water purchases dramatically and decreased soda consumption. Nothing changed in motivation, just the cue. He realized that success was often the result of the aggregation of marginal gains. If you improve just 1% each day, you'll be 37 times better after 1 year. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens slowly, then suddenly. The effects of your habits multiply as you repeat them, creating a powerful compounding effect. People often give up not because change is impossible, but because they don't see results quickly. They hit what James called the plateau of latent potential. You're working hard, eating better, going to the gym, and nothing seems to change. It feels like the effort is wasted. But just as ice doesn't melt until it reaches 32 degrees, your efforts are not being wasted. They're being stored. Breakthrough moments are often the result of many previous actions that build up the potential required to unleash major change. James reminded readers not to judge success by the immediate results. The outside world is blind to the buildup happening underneath the surface. The real work is invisible. Habits are like the roots of a tree. The roots grow underground, unnoticed, but they are what eventually support visible growth. The key to unlocking this latent potential is to stay consistent, even when progress feels slow. One of the ways to do this is through the technique of habit stacking. This method involves linking a new habit to an existing one. For example, after you brush your teeth, you do 10 push-ups. After you pour your morning coffee, you meditate for 1 minute. The existing habit becomes the anchor, and the new behavior finds a natural home in your routine. This approach makes change feel manageable. Instead of trying to build habits in a vacuum, you piggyback them on actions you already perform daily. This increases the chances of success because the cue is already part of your life. The more specific the pairing, the better. The brain craves consistency and context. James also discussed the power of creating a habit scorecard. This involves writing down your daily behaviors and labeling them as positive, neutral, or negative. For example, wake up is neutral. Hit snooze might be negative. Drink a glass of water is positive. By observing your behaviors without judgment, you become more aware of what needs improvement. Awareness is the first step to change. The scorecard acts like a mirror. Most people drift through their days on autopilot. By becoming conscious of daily actions, you gain clarity. The key is not perfection, but awareness. Once you know the actions that serve you and those that harm you, you can begin to make changes. Another core principle James introduced was the idea of identity reinforcement. Each action you take either reinforces or erodes the person you want to become. It's not about single heroic efforts. It's about showing up consistently. If you write 1 sentence a day, you're a writer. If you step into the gym, even briefly, you're an athlete. The more you repeat a behavior, the more it becomes part of who you are. Habits are not only the pathway to outcomes, they are the foundation of identity. Your habits are how you embody a new identity. They are the proof you give to yourself. I am this kind of person. James emphasized that every time you perform a habit, you're casting a vote for the person you want to be. No single action will change your identity, but the accumulation of votes builds a self-image. And just like elections, you don't need a unanimous vote to win. You just need a majority. Building habits is not about radical change. It's about mastering the art of showing up. It's about focusing on the system, not the goal. Systems are what make habits sustainable. They are repeatable. They don't rely on motivation. They rely on structure. James examined how to design systems that make habits stick. One tool is the use of implementation intentions. I will behavior at time in location. For example, I will stretch for 5 minutes at 6 in the morning in the living room. The more specific the plan, the higher the success rate, but intention alone is not enough. You also need to reduce friction, make the habit easy to start. The 2-minute rule helps here. Scale down any habit to a version that takes 2 minutes or less. Want a journal? Just write 1 sentence. Want to study? Open your book and read 1 paragraph. Starting is often the hardest part. Once in motion, momentum carries you forward. James understood that one of the most powerful forms of motivation is progress. People feel good when they see advancement. That's why habit tracking works. It provides a visual cue of success. Each check mark is a signal. I'm doing it. I'm moving forward. I'm growing. To support this, James recommended using visual measures of success. Whether it's a calendar with X marks or a habit tracker app, these tools help you stay engaged. The brain loves evidence. Progress makes the process satisfying. When the habit feels good, you repeat it. But what happens when you slip? Everyone misses a day now and then. That's part of the process. The rule is never miss twice. Missing once is a mistake. Missing twice is a new habit. The power lies in getting back on track quickly. Resilience, not perfection, is the goal. James also explored the role of accountability. When someone is watching, behavior improves. Public promises, accountability partners, and contracts can add stakes to your commitment. If you tell a friend you'll go to the gym, you're more likely to follow through. If there's a penalty for missing, the pressure increases. Social forces are powerful. Use them wisely. He shared the story of a man who wanted to quit smoking. He made a public Facebook post that for every cigarette he smoked, he would pay $100 to a friend. The financial cost added real pressure. It became easier to not smoke than to lose money. Commitment devices work because they lock in future behavior by making bad habits painful. James understood that identity, environment, repetition, and reward were the cornerstones of lasting behavior change. But he also acknowledged that success is rarely linear. There will be plateaus, setbacks, and slow periods. The key is patience. You have to be willing to embrace the process. That process is never glamorous. It's not marked by big moments, but by the quiet victories of daily action. You don't rise to the level of your dreams. You fall to the level of your habits. He compared habits to compound interest. You don't notice the benefit right away, but over months and years, the growth is undeniable. This principle is true in all areas of life: relationships, finances, learning, health. Small habits lead to significant transformation. James encouraged readers to fall in love with the process. If you focus only on results, motivation fades when the results don't appear quickly. But if you love the act of writing, running, cooking, or reading, then you'll continue, regardless of short-term outcomes. The process becomes the reward. That's the secret of the top performers. They are not driven by goals. They are driven by systems. They show up even when they don't feel like it. They practice consistency over intensity. They optimize for sustainability. James believed that one of the biggest threats to change is the expectation of instant gratification. In a world of fast food, fast internet, and fast answers, the idea of slow progress feels outdated. But the truth is that real change is slow. And that's okay, because slow change is more permanent. It's built on deep roots. The metaphor of bamboo growing underground is apt. For years, nothing appears above the surface. Then suddenly, in a few weeks, it shoots up feet into the sky. But that growth wasn't sudden. It was the result of years of unseen development. Your habits are like that. They are seeds. You water them daily, even if you don't see a sprout. Then one day the tree grows, but only if you were consistent enough to give it time. The key, James said, is to trust the process. Show up. Vote for the identity you want. Design your environment. Reduce friction. Make the habit satisfying. Measure your progress. And never, ever miss twice. Over time, this method builds what he called habitual resilience, the ability to return to the habit regardless of mood or circumstance. That's where true power lies. Not in streaks or perfection, but in returning to the process again and again. James ended the section with a reminder. Every action you take is a vote for the type of person you want to become. No single instance will transform your life, but the accumulation of tiny habits will. The path to lasting transformation, James had come to realize, was not paved with big breakthroughs, but with the quiet discipline of repetition. What most people misunderstood was that habits are not a finish line to cross, but a lifestyle to live. They are not about doing something amazing once, but about doing something simple consistently. As he continued to reflect on the architecture of behavior, James observed how environment remained the silent architect of destiny. A well-structured environment did the heavy lifting of discipline without requiring constant willpower. If you redesigned your surroundings to align with your goals, progress became frictionless. He revisited the concept of cues, the triggers that initiate a habit. These cues are part of the habit loop, and without them, habits often never start. By manipulating your surroundings, you could alter what your brain notices. A clean kitchen encourages healthy eating. A clutter-free desk invites focus. A laid-out yoga mat invites movement. James explained that habits are context-dependent. The same person may behave differently in different settings. At a library, one tends to read. At a party, one might socialize more. These behaviors are cued by the environment, not just by personal character. That's why success is not about motivation alone. It's about placing yourself in situations that bring out the best version of you. One strategy James encouraged was the idea of resetting your spaces. Designate spaces for specific behaviors. Use your bedroom for sleep, not for scrolling social media. Use the kitchen for eating, not working. The brain associates environments with routines. When you enter a space, your mind automatically prepares for the activity you've linked to that space. A deliberate arrangement of cues can drive behavioral outcomes. As he examined the deeper mechanisms of habits, James turned to the science of cravings. Behind every habit is a desire, sometimes conscious, often subconscious. You don't crave the habit itself. You crave the change and state it delivers. You don't want a cigarette. You want to feel relaxed. You don't want to scroll social media. You want to feel connected. Understanding the craving beneath the behavior is crucial. The craving is what gives the habit emotional power. If a cue triggers a strong desire, the brain automatically pursues the response. This is why it's so important to make good habits desirable. One method James shared is to use reinforcement. If a behavior feels enjoyable even in a small way, we're more likely to return to it. James encouraged leveraging dopamine, the chemical of anticipation and reward. When a habit is linked to even the smallest joy, the brain begins to anticipate that reward. This builds momentum. It's not the reward itself, but the anticipation that fuels motivation. He gave the example of making workouts more enjoyable by listening to music or podcasts you love, or rewarding yourself with a warm cup of tea after a morning jog. These small joys aren't bribes, they are systems. They reinforce the loop: cue, craving, response, reward. The importance of the reward stage cannot be overstated. It completes the habit loop and tells your brain, this was worth remembering. Over time, with repetition, the loop strengthens until the habit becomes automatic. This automation frees up mental energy for more complex decisions. But not all rewards are created equal. James emphasized the power of immediate rewards. Our brains are wired for instant gratification. That's why bad habits are often so sticky. They deliver pleasure right away. Good habits, on the other hand, tend to offer delayed rewards. Going to the gym doesn't result in a six-pack today. Eating a salad doesn't transform your body overnight. To overcome this imbalance, you must attach some form of instant reward to your good habits. Something tangible, something that feels good now. This helps counteract the delayed gratification that often weakens commitment. James also explored identity again from a deeper angle. Most people work backward. They focus on outcomes. I want to lose 10 pounds. Then they determine the process. I'll go on a diet. But the real shift happens when identity leads the change. Instead of saying, I want to lose 10 pounds, say, I am the type of person who cares for my body. This identity drives the behavior. It becomes who you are, not just what you do. This approach changes everything. It's no longer about achieving a goal and then stopping. It's about living as the person you wish to become. If you see yourself as a reader, you don't have to push yourself to read. You just do it, because it's who you are. Habits that are tied to identity are more enduring. James encouraged readers to begin identifying with their future selves. Ask, who do I want to become? Then prove it to yourself with small wins. Want to be a runner? Lace up. Want to be a writer? Write a sentence. Identity is not set in stone. It's sculpted through repetition. He addressed a common fear. What if I fail? What if I break the streak? James reminded everyone that failure is not the enemy. Quitting is. Missing a day is human. It's the response that matters. What you do next determines the direction of your trajectory. He introduced the concept of habit shaping. Start with a version that takes 2 minutes. Once that's easy, scale up. If your goal is to meditate for 10 minutes, start with just sitting on the cushion. Then close your eyes. Then breathe deeply. Gradually increase as the habit stabilizes. This approach makes change gentle. It respects your resistance while still building momentum. As habits stabilize, the brain engages in a process known as automaticity. Actions once requiring effort now happen with little conscious thought. This frees up cognitive resources. The behavior becomes reflexive. Brushing your teeth, driving a car, tying your shoes. These were once learned but now are automatic. The same can happen with writing, exercising, eating well, if you build the habit gradually. But building habits isn't only about what you do, it's about what you don't do. James spoke about the importance of eliminating bad habits. The 4 laws of behavior change, when reversed, create a blueprint for breaking unwanted behaviors. Make it invisible. Hide cues that trigger bad habits. Make it unattractive. Reframe your mindset about the habit's consequences. Make it difficult. Add steps or friction. Make it unsatisfying. Add accountability or penalties. He shared the story of Victor, a man who wanted to stop wasting time on YouTube. Victor unplugged his TV and locked it in a closet. He deleted the app from his phone and blocked the site on his browser. He didn't rely on willpower. He redesigned his environment. With no cue, there was no craving. With no access, the habit faded. Another woman who wanted to spend less started a rule. She could only buy something if she wrote it down on a list and waited 48 hours. By delaying gratification, she broke the loop of impulsive purchases. These strategies worked because they made the habit more difficult and less satisfying. Without cues and without reward, the behavior died. James explored another critical concept, the Goldilocks rule. Humans experience peak motivation when working on tasks that are right on the edge of their current abilities. Too easy, and you get bored. Too hard, and you feel overwhelmed. The sweet spot is just manageable. This principle applies to habits as well. If your habit is too challenging, you'll resist it. If it's too easy, you'll ignore it. The key is gradual progression. Add just enough difficulty to stay engaged without triggering failure. This ensures you remain in the zone of optimal learning and motivation. He illustrated this with the story of a violinist who improved not by practicing mindlessly, but by constantly pushing just beyond her comfort zone. She stayed in the Goldilocks zone, challenged, but not crushed. Over time, her skills compounded, and she became world-class. James emphasized that mastery is not about perfection, but about refining your habits over time. As you grow, your systems must evolve. What worked at the beginning may not work later. The goal is not to run the same mile every day, but to slowly extend the distance. Growth lives in the edge of discomfort. He also highlighted the danger of complacency. Success can be a trap. When habits work, we may stop improving. The athlete stops stretching. The writer stops editing. The entrepreneur stops learning. To avoid this, James introduced the concept of reflection. Regularly review your habits. Ask, is this still serving me? Is there a better way? What's holding me back? Reflection keeps your system alive. Without it, you stagnate. He recommended conducting habit reviews weekly or monthly. Track your progress. Look for bottlenecks. Celebrate wins. Adjust your systems. This practice transforms habits from a rigid loop into a flexible framework. James ended this phase of his exploration with a powerful insight. Small changes, repeated over time, lead to remarkable results. Not because they are dramatic, but because they are consistent. The magic is in the routine. The miracle is in the mundane. You don't have to be extreme. You just have to be consistent. You don't need to see change tomorrow. You just need to trust the process today. Habits are the invisible architecture of life. Build them wisely, and they will carry you where motivation never could. James had long understood that the success of habits did not rest solely on the individual's shoulders. While personal discipline, identity, and repetition were powerful, the invisible influence of culture often played an even bigger role. We tend to follow the norms of those around us. Whether we realize it or not, the group sets the standard for what is acceptable, expected, and rewarded. One of the most overlooked elements in habit formation is the social environment. Humans are tribal creatures. We want to fit in. We imitate what we see in our family, our workplace, our community. If you're surrounded by people who exercise daily, you're more likely to exercise. If everyone around you smokes, the habit feels normal. Culture shapes behavior more than logic ever could. James shared stories of people who transformed their lives by joining communities that embodied the habits they wanted. One man who wanted to become a reader joined a book club. Surrounded by others who loved reading, his identity shifted. He was no longer trying to become a reader. He was a reader because that's what the group did. This is why choosing the right tribe is vital. When habits are normal in your circle, they become easier to maintain. You don't need to explain or justify. You simply align with the culture. And that culture reinforces your behavior every single day. But the inverse is also true. If you're trying to change but your environment resists you, the friction grows. It's hard to eat clean when your roommates order pizza every night. It's hard to wake up early when your friends party late. That's why the most powerful habit hack is often this: change your environment, change your people. James didn't mean you should cut ties with everyone, but he emphasized that you must be intentional. Spend time with people who live the identity you seek. Let their behavior pull you upward. Mirror neurons in our brain ensure that we reflect the people around us. Choose carefully. Another critical insight James explored was the idea of tracking. What gets measured gets managed. Many people drift through life relying on memory and motivation, but data brings clarity. A food journal makes you aware of your diet. A savings tracker makes you aware of your spending. A habit journal brings your actions into the light. The act of tracking itself changes behavior. Simply knowing you have to record an action makes you more mindful. And with that awareness comes accountability. You can't improve what you don't measure, and you won't change what you tolerate. James suggested keeping things simple. A habit tracker can be as easy as checking a box or drawing an X on a calendar. Each mark is a visual cue, a reinforcement, a small win. It makes progress tangible, and it reminds you that you're building something, one day at a time. He warned against perfectionism. You don't need to be flawless. Missing one day won't break the system, but beware the second miss. That's where relapse begins. Never miss twice. That was the rule. If you mess up on Tuesday, get back on track by Wednesday. Forgive the slip, but don't make it a pattern. James returned to the concept of identity, the thread that weaved through every habit. He explained that the most powerful motivation is pride. Not pride in the arrogant sense, but in the deep satisfaction that comes from living in alignment with who you believe yourself to be. When your behavior matches your values, your self-image strengthens. That's why habits must start small. Small enough to be repeated. Small enough to succeed. Each successful repetition is a vote cast for the type of person you want to be. And when those votes pile up, your identity transforms. Change doesn't require massive action. It requires identity-based consistency. As James continued to teach, he acknowledged a truth that many find hard to accept. Habits will never be perfect. Life is chaotic. Distractions happen. Schedules shift. The goal is not unbroken streaks. It's resilience. Resilience is the ability to get back on track quickly, to recommit, to start again. He called this the art of restarting. In this art, failure is not a full stop, it's a comma. The best habit builders are not those who never fall, but those who always rise. They see setbacks as feedback, not as evidence of inadequacy. They learn, they adjust, they continue. James shared the story of a woman named Sarah. She had once been sedentary, unmotivated, and lost in a cycle of poor health. One day she committed to walking for 2 minutes a day. Just 2 minutes. That was all. It seemed laughably small, but she stuck with it. Over time, the walks got longer. Then came jogging. Then came strength training. 2 years later, Sarah completed her first triathlon. It all began with 2 minutes and consistency. The real lesson wasn't the triathlon, it was the identity. Sarah didn't force herself to become an athlete. She became one through small wins. Her habits proved it to herself, and that belief powered the rest of her transformation. James often returned to this core message. Small changes make a big difference. The reason they work is because they stack. Each small habit compounds. Like interest in a savings account, the results appear slowly, then all at once. He offered the metaphor of an airplane shifting course. If a plane headed from Los Angeles to New York shifts its course by just 3 degrees south, it will end up in Washington, D.C. instead of New York. That tiny shift at the start leads to a huge difference over time. The same is true for your habits. Change is rarely dramatic in the short term, but it is always significant in the long term. James ended his reflections with a call to action. He reminded readers that every moment is a chance to start. You don't need permission. You don't need the perfect plan. You don't even need motivation. You just need to start small and keep showing up. Build a system that supports you. Design your environment. Align your habits with your identity. Measure your progress, and never miss twice. In the end, success is not reserved for the extraordinary. It's built by ordinary people who do ordinary things consistently. That's the great secret. You don't need to change your entire life. You just need to change your day, because your days become your life. The most remarkable transformations are often invisible in the beginning. They happen quietly, beneath the surface, like roots growing underground. But when you trust the process, when you water the seed of habit each day, you awaken the miracle of compound growth. And one day, almost without noticing, you look back and realize you've become someone new. Success is never a leap. It's a quiet climb, one habit at a time. James Clear showed us that small actions, when repeated, shape massive outcomes. It's not about being perfect. It's about showing up again and again until it becomes who you are. If today's story helped shift even one pattern in your life, that's the start of something powerful. Subscribe to Victory Think, where we break down big ideas into simple, life-changing steps. Because when you master your habits, you master your future.